My name's GuyK, and I've been a professional bike tester for over 20 years. And hopefully you've already watched me getting wild around the trails of Whinlatter Forest. Absolutely beautiful place to come, incidentally, up in Cumbria in the Lake District. Hopefully you've already watched me getting properly wild on the new Whyte E-150S in the live ride review video, because that is a proper belter. It really brings across just how well this bike rides. But we need to get into the tech side of why it rides like that. So I'll stop waffling and let's have a look at this new Whyte. So in terms of geometry, Whyte are always really progressive with what they do with numbers. I mean, other people have caught them up since, but you know, they were one of the first to go properly long, low and slack. So 65-degree head, short offset fork, 75, well, just a fraction under, I think it's 74.8 effective seat angle, 440mm chainstay, which is really, really short for an e-bike. And that's because this Bosch motor is 48% smaller than it used to be, as well as 25% lighter. And they've also moved it around. So the motor's in the same place, but they've actually twisted it around and then slid this big power tube battery, internal battery, right down below and in front of it. So you've got a big old sump section there. But that means the centre of gravity is really, really low. I mean, that's a 625 watt-hour battery, so a really big capacity battery. And also, it's a completely solid tube. It's a complete hydroform tube, which not only saves Whyte weight, it also makes the bike far, far stiffer than, integrated bikes where actually the battery's just kind of hung underneath the guttering. You know, you've basically just got half pipe. Because this is a proper tube, it's far, far stiffer, and you can really feel that, as well as that super low centre of gravity. Just the way you can chuck this bike around is absolutely outrageous. And to make sure you can make the absolute maximum use of that handling, they've gone with the brand new WTB Tritec compound tyres in the tough high grip version in a 2.5, and you've got a Vigilante on the front, and you've got this really, really spiky Verdict on the back. I mean, it's basically kind of like a mud tyre, really, but huge side knobs on it. So actually it drifts really, really well on this kind of rocky surface. So it's great fun around the trail centre, but obviously if it gets wet, you've got tons of grip there as well. And these new tyres are absolute belters. I mean, I've never really liked WTBs before. I always felt like the tough was too wooden, but the light was too flimsy. But these are absolutely spot on. Really loving these new Tritec tyres. They're right up there with any of the other tyres they could have fitted. And obviously the fact that they're heavy duty front and rear means it's really tough. And, you know, they'll take a proper beating. Again, the wheels, using WTB Com I30 trail rims, so decent width. They've got DT Swiss spokes. It's Whyte own brand hubs, but they've even gone to the trouble of fitting those oversized ends, the torque caps, so you're getting maximum stiffness out of this Yarry fork. And the Yarry's a really stiff fork anyway. 35mm legs. I mean, it says E-MTB over on the far side, but to be honest, all RockShox larger forks are E-MTB compatible. You've only got the simpler RS damper on here. Basically, it's a motion control damper. So relatively simple, but still you've got that debonair negative spring on the far side, so massive negative spring, which means it's super, super plush, but the mid-stroke is really, really well controlled, so this you can still properly rail on this fork. And, you know, it'd be no sweat if you did want to upgrade it, just to change the damper in there to Charger 2 damper out of a Lyric, and then effectively you've got a Lyric, because the air spring, the seals, the bushings, the actual chassis of the fork is exactly the same. So it's only really that damper that's different. And if you want that damper straight away, then there's an RS model of this bike, which comes with a Lyric Select fork and XO1 rather than GX Eagle for another 500 quid. So it's 5,250, not 4,750. I think that's right. If that's wrong, I'll clear it up in the captions below. In terms of the rear shock, you've got RockShox Deluxe Select. So again, just totally sorted. Running about 25 psi in it, and I'm not quite getting full travel, around 30% for the first run round, and got full travel, so I guess somewhere between 25 and 30% sag will be absolutely bob on. As you can see, you can just about squeeze a smaller water bottle in here if you put it in a side cage, but you are going to have to be careful with nudging the lockout round if you slide the bottle in and out. But you got, you know, rebound damping, and like I say, the actual compression tune is totally sorted. In terms of the suspension itself, it's exactly the same quad link layout as Whyte's other bikes, so the S150, T130, G180, G170, and you've got these big oversized lifetime warranty bearings there. You've got this little yoke that drives the shock, and it's just super wide, single chainring specific pivot point on the back, and the whole bike just feels absolutely rock solid. And then they've dropped, and again, the other thing they've done here in terms of the dynamic feel of the bike, as well as keeping the back end short, the long end really long, they've also dropped the bottom bracket as low as they dare. So that's only a 165mm crank on there. So just to limit the amount of crank taps you get in. I mean, you can see there's a couple on there, but not many. I think there's another one on the far side. But yeah, no, they've got away with it. And despite the fact it's probably the bottom bracket's height, it's more similar to most sort of 130, 120mm travel bikes. It's only 325mm. Proper low, but that just means you can carve the bike round. And watch the live ride review. I have an absolute bloody riot on this bike. Other features worth talking about, like I say, this is GX on here, but another big difference with this Bosch motor, as well as the fact it's lighter, it's more compact, it now comes with a proper chainring, so you're getting a proper SRAM 34 tooth X-Sync 2 chainring. So again, really big. That's, compared to the horrible little cog you got on Bosch before, which were rubbish in mud and they made horrible grinding noise and they made the whole kind of drive chain really inefficient. You've now got a proper big chainring, so it'll last. The chain will last a lot better, and the whole chain feel, the whole efficiency when you're pedaling feels way better, even with that power assist. But also, the crucial thing with this new Bosch Generation 4 motor is that when you go faster than the rev limiter on it, I mean, it's still limited to about 25 kilometres an hour, and that's linked with the gears, so don't bugger about with that. It ruins your warranty, and it's just a dumb thing to do. It's so even when you overspeed now, when you're pedaling, when you get up to 30 kilometres an hour or something, there's no drag from the motor anymore, and that makes such a difference. Even when you've got plenty of life left in the battery, that makes a massive difference. But obviously, when the battery dies on you, it makes a vast difference, because the old Bosch, if the battery died, you were in a world of trouble trying to get one home. The other crucial bit of spec on here is you've got SRAM's GuyK RE brakes. So that's the old school code caliper, monster 4-pot caliper running on 200mm brake rotors. You've got, the hose is hidden out of the way in the centre of the caliper there. It's not quite as easy to bleed as the new code, and it hasn't got the swing link little cam in the lever like full spec code has, but this is just an absolute bomb-proof gravity brake, and it works brilliantly here. Just with those big rotors, you've just got so much power and control under your fingertips. So whether you're braking or whether you're turning, this bike, you can just properly take it to the ragged sliding edge and just have an absolute blast. In terms of cockpit, you've got Whyte's own grips, these nice fat ends on them, 780mm bar and 40mm stem. That's about as short as you can go with a 35mm bar. So again, really encourages really aggressive sort of loads of traction control through that short stem and the short offset fork, but that just gives it a real agility and a real responsiveness on top of that super stable baseline feel. It's got Whyte's own dropper posts. It's utterly generic and utterly fine. That's all I really need to say about it. And you've got Whyte's own saddle. And it's held in place with Whyte's little internal seat post clamp there. So all nice and sealed out the way. As ever, it's a really British proof bike. Again, another neat detail, so I haven't picked up from before. Designed in Great Britain. Whyte have been designing bikes now for, it must be 20 years since the PRS T1 came out. So, and before that, they were designing for Marin. So massive heritage in terms of practicality. And these guys all ride as well, and they ride really hard. Sam, one of the engineers for Whyte, is one of the best enduro riders in the country. Ian, who does a lot of Ian's kind of their back. No, he's not a backroom boffin. He's a boffin who's very much alive on the trail. He's an absolute killer rider, really fast rider. And Andy, who specs all the bikes, and he specs them by riding all the bits of them to the ragged bloody limit. He's a proper, they're all proper riders. It is a rider owned. You get brands going on about being rider owned, but You need to ride at a certain level to produce a bike like this. You have to totally get what you need to make a bike this dynamically alive, despite the fact it's got a ruddy great motor and battery in it. You know, this bike is born from a real understanding and a real appreciation of what it takes to make an absolute pinner. Even when you got to factor in a big old battery. I mean, that's a big piece in there. I mean, you can actually fit a smaller battery if you want, or, you know, there's room to extend it if you get a larger capacity battery later on, if they become available. There's plenty of room in there to, you know, there's room for upgrading in that tube. You know, it's not a done deal, but it's just such a solid, sorted pinner of a bike. And this is, you know, this is kind of the more kind of trail focused one. This is only the 150 bike. They do a 180 as well with a coil shock in it, which is even more radical. So that thing must be utterly insane. In terms of dynamic balance and the way this bike rides, it's absolutely outstanding. Undoubtedly the best e-bike I've ridden in terms of handling. And yeah, it really does live up to that cliche that it probably handles better than a conventional bike. Once you get used to just how much that weight low down lets you rip it through turns, it is absolutely insane what you can do on this bike. And you don't have to be an incredibly good rider to kind of access it either. You don't need to be someone who naturally throws a bike about. It just wants to do it. It naturally just wants to drag its bars and slide its rear tyre. This bike just is gagging to be absolutely thrashed, which most e-bikes are pretty uptight when you ride them. You can ride them really hard, but their natural kind of default character is pretty uptight. This thing is a maniac. And one nice little detail here, I don't know if you followed the story of, there's actually a Formula One team called Rich Energy who completely nicked, allegedly, the Whyte logo. Well, it's been proved in court they did. And so Whyte actually are currently in a court case with them to get that sorted out. But it's a very nice touch there that the cap on this little charger port there actually says energy on it. Because, you know, obviously just because that's where the energy goes in, there's no wordplay there at all. Nice work, lads. But yeah, you've got, like I say, you've got that Intergrip seat clamp there internally. Lifetime warranty bearings. You've got this one-piece super solid yoke in there for the suspension. And you can see it's all packaged pretty neatly back in there. It might not be the prettiest way of doing it. And although the cables are all external, at least that means there's no, you know, they're not really kind of kinked and meshed about inside. At least they're free to move about. And there is a fair amount of cabling hanging out the bottom. That is potentially vulnerable if you really belly it out. You know, you probably ought to be a bit careful of that if you're not so good at your logs and you're just trying to slide it over the top. That, you know, that's obviously a potential casualty. But on the other hand, they're not being forced through really, really tight bends where they're going to snap internally. I know that happens on other designs where externally they might look neater, but internally they're actually a right little nest of vipers. So I think that, in a particularly random order, has covered off pretty much everything you need to know about the tech spec on this. There's a full size range on this E150, so extra small through to extra large, which is great. A lot of companies are producing only a limited size range, just either for cost reasons or just because they can't package the motor and battery into smaller frames. So it's great that Whyte have got a full range on this bike, 2 different spec levels to keep things simple, and then the E180, which is the long travel bike, which hopefully I'll get a go on when I can, only comes in medium and large, so that's a proper big beast of a bike. This is a much more kind of, I guess, usable everyday bike, especially because the range I've got from it's really, really good. I mean, it's done 3 laps of Whinlatter today in E-MTB, and I'm still only halfway through the battery. So it's a full day out bike, this. I've done 60k cross country, pinning it hard, and, you know, still had reserve in the battery to get home on. So it is just a really, really good, complete, all-round mountain bike. But the absolute take-home of all the clever bits and all the clever touches they've done on it is just the handling is absolutely phenomenal. This thing is unhinged, the way it corners. Absolutely loved it up here today. I mean, it's a great place to showcase a brilliant handling bike. And, you know, that's exactly what this has done. So please make sure you watch that live ride video. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you click for notifications. get in on the comments below and get asking away there. I've ridden a lot of other e-bikes. I've ridden a lot of other e-bike motors, including the latest Bros. So more than happy to talk about where this E-150 sits in relation to all of the other bikes. But definitely in terms of handling and in terms of the performance of that new Bosch motor and the capacity of the battery, this has to be a new benchmark bike for this year. It really does. And the fact it's really, really well priced as well, even though it comes from, you'll buy it from a local Whyte dealer, so you've got that proper doorstep support, which is always handy with an e-bike. I mean, Bosch have got a great reputation for looking after people, but still, if you've got a motor and a controller and a battery in there, there's a lot more to go wrong. Not that I've had any glitches with this in the month or so I've had it test riding it.